Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Clover Podcast. I should really count and see how many episodes I've done. I finally got the mysterious episode 3 that it had been in editing and going through review posted. So if you haven't seen that one and wondering where that one's at, it is done. And then I should probably go figure out my basic math on how many episodes so I can tell you everyone. But I'm Steven Steiner, and I'm the YPA for Clinton, Caldwell, and DeKalb counties. And today joining me is Sarah Townley, and she's going to introduce herself.
All right. Hi, guys. Like he said, my name is Sarah Townley. I'm the YPA down in Jasper County, which is in Southwest region. If you guys don't know kind of where that is, Joplin is probably the major city that I have in my county. I've been with Extension for a little less than a year now. I guess that means probably about 10 months. And I'm actually a Southwest Missouri 4-H alumnus. I grew up in Dade County 4-H, which is just a county adjacent to mine that I work in now. Grew up on my family's beef cattle farm, and I showed hogs and horses whenever I was a 4-H member. I also enjoyed photography and cake decorating. I was on state 4-H council. I served a year as an alternate representative, and then I served 1 year as a Southwest regional representative. And in 2016, 2017, I served as state 4-H council president. So once I got out of high school, I went down to University of Arkansas. I know, but I got my bachelor's degree in ag education, communications, and technology. And I knew I wanted to come back here and work for University of Missouri Extension because 4-H had such an impact in my life. That's what I wanted to come back and do, was work for Missouri 4-H. So that's kind of where I am now.
Well, you basically answered all the questions I had for today. This is going to be the world's shortest podcast episode. So, but we'll dig into it. So, were you a 4-H member your whole life, or did you start like midway, like 10 years old, 15? I started when I was like 15. When did you start?
So I was kind of a late joiner too. I'm not one of those lifelong, my older siblings were, because I'm kind of more or less an oldest child. I'm the oldest child in my family. I have some older half siblings that are significantly older than me. Like the age difference between me and the next one up is 13. So I was the oldest one in my family. Wasn't one of those that was going to club meetings when I was 2 or anything like that. I joined when I was in 8th grade, and by that point in time, it was kind of something like my dad was a 4-H member back when he was a kid, and my parents kind of knew about it, but didn't really, I don't know that there's really any strong 4-H programs in our county at that time. They just never really put us in there. And then they talked, maybe my club leader was how they got involved, and they put us in 4-H. And at that point in time, I was like, oh, something fun for me to do. I went to a small Christian school, so I didn't have a lot of the sports or anything like that I could do at public school. So I was like, all right, this is something cool that I can get involved in. I'm just going to, at that time, I thought 4-H was just, I was going to go to club meetings. I was going to, maybe do some projects. I didn't really see myself going beyond that club level. I didn't really know what existed out that far. And kind of, I guess you would say, maybe in upper elementary and lower middle school, I dealt with some bullying in school, and it was kind of, a lot of that had to do with the fact that I was doing advanced coursework. I even at one point was considered a grade ahead, and I think sometimes kids don't like it if you skip a grade whenever you're already partway through elementary school, because they think that you think that you're smarter than them. And so then kind of a lot of my confidence and a lot of my being sure of my talents and abilities kind of tanked at that point, because nobody really believed in me or I guess had faith in me or wanted really anything to do with me. And so when I joined 4-H, it was in the winter of my 8th grade year, my club leader in the spring brought up going to summer camp. And so I was like, oh, that's fun. I went to church camp when I was in 6th grade. I liked it. Maybe I'll just go to camp, because I don't want to be a counselor and everything like that. And oh my gosh, it was a life-changing experience. Me, just a little me who never really had friends, and the friends that I did have were also kind of like me. They were more or less, considered misfits. They weren't really the ones that fit in. And so whenever I went to 4-H camp, and everybody was just super accepting, like even some of the kids significantly older than me. I was, 14. Some of the kids were 17, 18. We weren't like buddy, but they were still super accepting and wanted to, they would tell me that I did a good job on something, want me in their group or want me on their team. And just to have people that wanted you and that appreciated you was something that was just, it was life-changing for me, because it wasn't something that I experienced regularly in my life up to that point. And so that's kind of where I was at. I kind of talked for a while on this bullet point, but I joined when I was in 8th grade. And so I wasn't one of those lifelong 4-Hers, but I got involved pretty quickly after that because it was a life-changing experience.
Wow, that's a pretty powerful statement, story. I don't even know how to even phrase that. That's pretty cool what 4-H was able to do for you at that time, especially, because let's say you were a late bloomer and compared to 4-H terms, and a lot of people, coming in, lifelong, 4-Hers, like I had Northwest Regional Rep Caroline Mays on. She's a Clinton County 4-Her of mine. And she was like, yeah, I was probably a month old, my first club meeting. And so you're talking 8th grade. So you went from 8th grade to joining later, and then you were state council El Presidente.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, before we get into that, because I have questions when you were going through your introduction, which was a pretty good one. You showed hogs and horses on a cattle farm. Explain how that worked out.
So that was kind of one of those things that different counties have different strengths, different, they'll have project leaders in one thing, but maybe they don't have, and someone who has done it for a long time, they may say horses. You may have someone in your county that is good at horses. They know what they're doing. They've grown up in it. They're 50 years old. They've had horses their whole life. And so your county's horse program is really strong, but there may not be anybody that you've gotten a hold of yet that is good at beef or whatever. That was kind of for me, a lot of that depended on, it was the project leaders that pushed me to show animals is kind of how because like I said, I've a lot of times in my life been very self-conscious. A lot of my personal fears are embarrassment, being disliked, not having everybody, I want everybody to get along. I want everybody to be friends. I don't like confrontation, not huge on drama, that kind of thing. And so that was kind of the disadvantage to joining 4-H so late, was being around other kids who grew up showing livestock or horses. That's kind of intimidating because you don't want to look dumb showing a horse in front of kids that have been in saddle since they were 2. And so as far as beef goes, I really, really wanted to show beef cattle. And I tried to teach myself how to do that, training some of my bottle calves, but I did eventually, and it wasn't any of the kids in my 4-H program, anything, there's other kids like online that kind of shamed me for having cattle that weren't, the best or whatever. It kind of made me feel bad, and I never showed cattle for that reason. But on the flip side of that, our horse project leader at the time, I don't think she does horse for the county we grew up in anymore. My sister is a horse project leader for a different county now. She's a volunteer in a different county. But our horse project leader was the absolute best about giving us opportunities and pushing us in the right kind of ways. And so she, a lot of times, would call us and be like, hey, we're going to go to the arena. We're going to load up on this day, this time, and we're going to take these 3 horses and we're going to go ride. And so we'd say, okay. And so she'd take us with her. We would go to the arena and we would ride. Of course, my sister and I ended up doing some chores, kind of working as farm hands for her too, but she would tell us when shows were. Of course, the county fair, she always made us show at the county fair. But we used her horses because at that point in time, my dad had never had horses. My sister wanted them so bad, but he'd never had them. He was afraid would get hurt. He didn't know, the ins and outs of taking care of horses. Now we have 3. My sister owns all of them. She and I both ride them, but that's our thing now that we're grown up. We have horses because that's something we like to do. But that's just kind of how that went. Our horse project leader provided us the horses, provided us opportunities. Sometimes would even pay fees for us, for riding or for entry fees or stuff. Not all the time, but sometimes she would take us to AQHA shows or whatever. But she gave us opportunities. She wanted us to learn those things, and she pushed us to do things even whenever I was embarrassed to do it in front of the other girls that were horse girls. But and this is kind of getting off on a rebel trail too. Oh, and I have to say the same thing about my swine project leader. She really pushed and helped us to show hogs at county fair. But I think one of my best memories from 4-H and from showing horses and all of that is one show that I went to. This is whenever I was still fairly young and new to it. I think I was just showing in maybe a showmanship and a horsemanship class, just those 2. I wasn't doing anything else. But it was the halter showmanship class, one of the first ones of the day. And my project leader was always very, honest about being responsible. And it started from whenever we were in the driveway at our house. Every single time we load horses to go somewhere, she said, all right, we're going to go through our checklist. What do we need? And we have to go through, does the truck have enough gas? Check your trailer tires. Do you have your saddle? Do you have your halters? Do you have your bits and bridles and everything like that? She went through everything. She was adamant about that. She taught us, you always check before you go somewhere that you have everything you need. When we were at the shows, she would always make sure when you are on deck, you are listening, you are ready to go, and you're going to go in that arena when they call your number. So here I was, probably 14 or 15. One of my first horse shows, not my first one, but it's just a halter showmanship class. And they, the class before me, they called the numbers of me and 2 other girls that were on deck to show the next class. So whenever it was my turn, they called our numbers. I went in first, and I, did my thing, set my horse up, did the pattern, set my horse up, was in front of the judge. Then I went to the lineup. They called the numbers for the other 2 girls. Nothing. Waited a minute or 2, called the numbers, and here they come. They're running. They're getting like, oh no, we're late. And they come and they're running and they get in there. They do their pattern real quick. They set up real quick. And of course, they're just giggling because, oh no, we were late. I ended up taking first in that class. And there may have been some other things, that I did that could have been better in the eyes of a judge as far as showmanship. But my project leader was pretty adamant that it was because, she said, I'm proud of you. You took that seriously. You were on time. You were ready. You were respectful to that judge and that judge's time. And that's a lot of the reason why you won. So I have to say that was one thing that I learned in 4-H, and one good thing because my project leader pushed me to be on time, to be respectful, and to be prepared. So that was kind of long roundabout way of why I showed hogs and horses and not cattle.
That's interesting. I've had similar experiences with cattle in the cattle industry and having some of those things. And I didn't realize this until a couple of my friends told me long after college. A lot of that, how I got through with some of that stuff was confidence. I never thought I was a confident person. And they're like, you don't realize that you're probably more confident than us. And they were pretty confident and successful people themselves. But I experienced a lot of that. You don't have the good quality cattle. You don't have this. You don't have that. Looked down upon. All of that stuff that you have seen, and you're talking about right now. I've experienced that. Our difference, and it's not good or bad. It's just how we are different as people. Is I didn't care. Like you were talking about, everyone to get along. If people get along, they get along. If they don't, they don't. Confrontational. When people get really confrontational, I just like to sit back and watch. Like, I'm not a big drama fan. I think it's kind of annoying if it involves me. But when it's 2 other people, I'm like, go ahead. I need cheap entertainment for, a half hour. Cattle barns are great for that. Watching 2 people argue over something completely and totally pointless entertains me. So yeah, that's just how that stuck out to me on how we are different. Is our experiences, because I believe you might have talked about that on Facebook, and I don't believe I commented or even reached out, but that was one thing that when you brought it up here, I know what you went through, and there's a lot of people who go through that. And honestly, a lot of times I think about when I'm doing, when I'm out working with people, and I don't mean in my job, I mean just out in general. Like, everyone keeps saying high school ends, but high school doesn't end. We just get older and we're not confined by the school. The people are still the same in a lot of ways. I mean, they do change and they grow up some, and as far as that, but yeah, there's still a lot of that pettiness, high school cliques, and I understand that. And I don't want this to say that I'm blaming the cattle industry or anything for that, because it's afforded me a lot of great things and a lot of great people and friendship. And a lot of the reason why I have this job is because I was successful there, and built confidence and stuff like that. But, I do share in some of those experiences that you have. And it's interesting because I wonder how my path would be different after listening to your story on how, you didn't go through the cattle after you had one bad experience. And I wonder if I would have been able to find something like you did that did what cattle did for me, just in a different way, because that's just an interesting story to hear about. I do have one to talk about being embarrassed and being talked about. uh, so I'm showing this crossbred heifer my first time, first year showing. Okay, so 2005, I'm 15 years old. We go to the American Royal, and I'm showing this heifer, and she's not having a good day, and she's all wound up and everything. So I go out and show her, and uh, she blows up and drags me. Well, the guys that were helping me was my ag teacher in high school, and one of his good friends, and they said, "Whatever you do, don't let go." So I get drug across. So it looked like I was just skiing across the American Royal, like on my stomach, just holding on, not letting go of the halter. Well, eventually it gets ripped out of my hands, rope burn and everything like that. She goes and stands with the Herefords. I go over and get her, and drag her back over. I was like middle of the pack, and the judge is like, "Yeah, I saw her on the way by at 100 miles an hour. She was a pretty good heifer." So in that moment, I should have been embarrassed, but I didn't. I was one of those people who didn't care. So I, like, when people get embarrassed by things, it's a different deal for me, because that's one thing that I've struggled with. It's, if you can embarrass me, you've done something that's hard to do, because I'm I'm always telling embarrassing stories and stuff like that about me. So it's hard for that to happen. Just, some of those stories stuck out about how we're different. You do realize you're muted, right?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, I saw. No, you're good.
My internet kicked me.
Oh, it's all right. We're still recording, so you're still live. So yeah, that's just some of the differences, because we've talked a few times at staff meetings and stuff like that to hear those stories. So, what were some of your other favorite projects? Was it photography?
Yeah, photography and cake decorating were my two favorite non-animal projects, I would say.
What was it about those projects that drew you in?
I think photography, maybe. And of course, I never, oddly enough, really showed any photography. I just kind of did the project, and I was on the state 4-H photo corps one year. I think that's what really got me into photography and kind of led to my education path, and the fact that I do that is like a side gig now. So photography, that was just kind of one that I was kind of interested in anyway. Cake decorating was not. It was one of those things that I never really thought about doing it. It just never really crossed my mind that decorating cake was something I could do. I'm sure I messed around at my grandma's house and, decorated cookies or, just stuff like that. But the actual, like, doing it like they do it on the TV shows or stuff like that, that never really crossed my mind as something I could do. So I just kind of joined it because we had a cake decorating leader at that time in my club. And so I just kind of did it because it was there, and I ended up really liking it a lot. And me And one of the other girls, she's 2 years younger than me, and she was the project leader at that time. She's not anymore, but it was her granddaughter. Me and her actually got the opportunity to make a wedding cake for a real wedding, because her grandma was the cake decorating leader, and her mom was actually our club leader. And so her mom knew of someone who was getting married and said, we'll do it for free if you're okay with the 4-H kids doing it. And so we did. I saw pictures of it. It was a 3-tier cake, but we didn't end up stacking it. It was kind of in the summer, and it was humid. We had trouble with the flowers and stuff, but we had like one of those it was like one of those stacked things to where you can like stack the layers on different like tiers of the little stack thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's called, but it was one of those. We didn't stack the layers on each other, but that was a fun experience that I had with cake decorating. And then that's also another thing. I do cake decorating and photography as side hustles. I do those now. Those are things that I got started with in 4-H.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's always fun to hear the people if they stick with the projects, or how involved they are with them later on or during their time. So okay, so during your 4-H career, what was something, or people who even know you now, or people who knew you then know you now, what was one project that you did that you may not been good at, but you stuck with it, or you did it only for a year or maybe 2 years, but something that would surprise people about you that you tried?
I would say most of the projects that I tried that never really stuck with would be ones that maybe unfortunately, I think there were a lot that maybe I enrolled in, and either there wasn't a project leader or I just somehow didn't get the hours in and never finished. So I think photography and cake decorating were really the only ones that I got the hours in for meetings. A lot of the rest of them were just ones that I tried and maybe never got my hours in. Welding and woodworking probably were some, which I ended up I never really did. I guess the thing with that was I was still a 4-H member when I was a freshman in college. And so part of that was never being able to get back home at the right time to get my hours in for welding. But as an I actually have, for my degree, I have a minor in ag mechanics, ag systems technology. And so I did end up welding. For that minor in ag systems. And I absolutely loved that. But I did that. What else did I do? This one's not one that you necessarily have to be enrolled in the project for, but I did several years of public speaking. I was eligible, I think, 4 different years for state contests, but I think I only competed 2 years. I competed 1 year at state in extemp and extemporaneous, and I did 1 year at state in tech assisted. I enrolled in the beef project. I didn't do much with that. I don't know. Like horse, swine, cake decorating, and photography, the ones that I consistently was able to like put enough work in and get my hours in, and that we had project leaders for. Because our back whenever I was a member, that the county that I grew up in, it's still kind of a small program, but back then it was very, very small. Like whenever I joined my club, I think we were one of like 3 families in the club, which is the bare minimum. And it grew over time. And that was one of those things that I had a lot of people tell me, you're very talented, you're good at this, you're good on the farm, you're good at public speaking. You deserve to be in a program where, you're going to have all these opportunities. And I said, well, that kind of attitude, if I have that kind of attitude, then that club that I'm in is going to stay that way forever, because everybody's going to keep leaving. So I'll take my chances. I'll stay in that club and I'll do the best that I can for that club. So if kids want to join this club later on, maybe they'll have opportunities because me and some other people like me have worked hard to stick it out and make this club the best that it can be.
Okay, so that's awesome. You're a pretty resilient person. You faced a lot of challenges and you stuck with them and done some pretty cool things. So let's talk about public speaking, because that was one thing that I found interesting, because you talk about, in high school being self-conscious, and then going and doing public speaking is probably going through high school is one of my scariest things. So how did you manage that, everything going on with public speaking, and go compete the 2 years?
Can you say that again? Sorry, my internet cut out.
So we were talking about public speaking and the internet. Let's see if we can get Sarah back. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. So we were talking about public speaking and, you being self-conscious, but you went and competed 2 years at the state public speaking contest for Missouri 4-H. Walk us through that. Did you hear what my question?
I didn't hear the end of it. Sorry.
Okay, walk us through state public speaking as you were talking about, because you're talking about being self-conscious, when you started. So did you grow into that and be more comfortable when it came to public speaking, or was that a struggle? Because it was for me, and I found that interesting that you did 2 years at the state contest.
I think that was one of those things that, like, at our county achievement day, and it was one of those things that we always, of course, I know a lot of counties like my county that I'm working in now does pre-registration because you don't want to know if you're going to have kids for judges and stuff like that. But we always signed up at the door for everything we're going to do, and we kind of, yes, there's certain things that you can go on because our region does a regional achievement day. I don't know that anybody else does that, but we do. And so everybody has their county achievement day, and then there are only certain things that you get to go on to regional achievement day. And so, like, for project judging, like member judging, you can only go on in something that you are enrolled in the project for. Or you can basically, what you can take to regional achievement day is one member judging. You just do one category and then one other thing, I believe. So you can go on with a speech and go on with a demonstration, so on and so forth. But at our county level, we were just kind of encouraged to do everything, try everything, even though we could only go on in, pick one member judging project to go on in. Our project leader, our club leader and all the project leaders encouraged us to do all the member judging. Like, even if I know nothing about chickens, do poultry, just do it for fun. So I think with Clover Kids, they let the Clover Kids do member judging, even though they can't compete. So, and it was the same thing with, like, share the fun, public speaking, working demonstrations. Our club leader was like, just do it. And so I think one time I hadn't prepared a speech. I didn't do a prepared speech or a tech-assisted speech or anything like that. And our club leader was like, just do extemporaneous. And that was because she was kind of like, I don't know if she thought anyone would do it, because it's not something anyone really ever did in our county. But I was like, you know what, I'm doing an extemporaneous speech because it sounds fun and it can't hurt to try. So I ended up doing it. And because there was maybe one other person that tried it, or maybe nobody else did, I ended up qualifying to go on to state because I did it at the county level. And so I ended up going to state public speaking contest. Didn't do very well, didn't even make it past the first round. I was still glad that I went. I was kind of like, wow, I drove all the way to Columbia to just do the speech and absolutely flop at it. But it was still a good experience. And then later I ended up, the YPA that was in my county at the time contacted me and asked if I wanted to be the spokesperson for, this was back whenever Missouri 4-H is partnering with, I guess, like ADM and Feeding America to do the Invest an Acre thing. I was the county spokesperson for that. And so she had me put together a presentation to give at some of the other extension stuff, like the Hay School, soil and crop conferences. And so my YPA was the one who kind of got my foot in the door with giving that speech to tell farmers how they could help people in their community fight food insecurity. So I ended up taking that speech to state public speaking contest. So that's how that one came about. But so that was kind of with my club leader and my YPA kind of pushing me to try things or to be that advocate.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a cool story. Okay, so what other stuff did you do on the state and regional level?
So, like I said, I didn't really, when I joined 4-H, I was like, oh, it's just going to be a club. It's just going to be something we're going to do, do some projects, do some farm stuff, do some community service, like pick up the trash on the road, whatever. And then
I'll tell you what, this is a good example of technology only being good when it works.
all right. So I think my Wi-Fi is telling me that it's not happy with Zoom right now. But so again, like I said, when my club leader told me about, hey, there's summer camp. They do this down at Roaring River every year, and our region does a whole region-wide camp down at Roaring River State Park. She's like, you guys should think about going to camp. And like I said, I was kind of like, oh, I went to church camp in 6th grade. It was fun. We went for a week. We swam, we swam in the pool, had snacks, whatever. And so I went, and it was just a whole different experience as far as kind of the dynamic, the way that kids acted, the things that we did, some of our traditions. And I just felt so welcome there. Camp was an absolutely amazing experience. And even for me, I have been back to camp every single year since. That was in 2011, my first year that I went to camp, and I was eligible to go to teen camp and to be a counselor. Until I aged out, I was a counselor and I attended our teen camp. And then for the 2 years after that, after I aged out, I came back as a volunteer staff person, which is not necessarily something that the staff, faculty and staff in our region just let everybody do. It's one of those things that I enrolled as a 4-H volunteer. I was someone who had been very dedicated to the 4-H program and knew camp really well. And so they let me come back. And then, of course, this past year, I got hired on in May, and I came back to camp in June, and it is still the highlight of my entire year. So long story short, that's how I got involved beyond the county level. And so then once I got involved at that regional level, I made friends there that even still to this day, I still talk to the friends that I made in camp. Sometimes still we'll go hang out, have lunch, whatever. Made those connections, friended people on Facebook or whatever, and then I got involved with the regional, Achievement Day, some of the regional energizers, stuff like that. And I would always ask my friends from Barton County or Greene County or wherever else around the region, like, hey, are you guys coming to this? Yeah, I'm coming to this. I can't wait to see you guys. So got involved because of the friends that I made at camp and because of the awesome time I had there, and some of the faculty and staff actually that I met at camp. Of course, Carla from Lawrence County was one of those people that I met at camp, and she was a mentor to me and a very valuable person in my life as I was going up through the 4-H program, and now one of my coworkers. And Bob McNary, who's now my supervisor, was all those years a very good mentor to me and someone that I really looked up to, and a very valuable person in my life. And so getting involved at that regional level and having those people that believed in me, Carla and Bob were two of those, and then my YPA at the time, her name was Becky. Those were three people that really, if they hadn't believed in me and kind of supported me all that way, there's a lot of things that I wouldn't be and things that I wouldn't have done by now. And so after that, getting involved at the state level, my first trip to state 4-H Congress, I think I was probably 14 or 15 then, but 15, 16, something like that. I knew from day one at state Congress that I wanted to be state 4-H council president one day. I knew it from my first trip. And so that was a goal that I set. I think that first year probably I maybe had decided not to run for regional rep just because of the commitment. I don't think I was old enough to drive yet, all that kind of stuff. But then I immediately started working on making that goal. I wanted to be state 4-H council president. That was something I wanted to do. That was the kind of leader I wanted to be. And kind of, I'd gone through that transformation of being the kid who was scared to be embarrassed, maybe even scared that if I was in the spotlight too much, people wouldn't like me, and that I knew that might hurt my feelings. I went from being the kind of, to so many people in 4-H have helped me, whether it's, some of my friends or some of the faculty and staff that were mentors to me, that I want to be in this kind of position to where I can not only represent 4-H to all kinds of people around the state, but also be there for all of the members and to talk to a lot of the members and be able to reach out and just be in that position to where I was able to help people. So that's kind of along. So Texas 4-H or Utah 4-H, I still, interact with people on Instagram and Facebook or whatever that I made friends with at National Congress. So that's kind of my story about how I got involved beyond the club level.
Wow, your story, an amazing one to listen to, and so like I have so many more questions for you. What was it like going from a counselor at 4-H camp to coming back as a volunteer? Because you are right, that is a hard deal, and I think that's for a lot of camps. And there's a reason for that. I think they want you to have a little step back at camp and stuff like that because you're coming back as an adult now. What was that like?
I think it goes from a lot of the engaging in things as a member and kind of like, I guess, whenever you are a camper, that camp is there for you to be a participant, yes, but a recipient almost. So a lot of the resources like doing like sitting down and doing the activities and not taking as much of an active leadership role is what you do as a camper. And kind of, not that you don't have responsibility, because that's definitely one of the things that we teach at 4-H. At 4-H camp, you have your KP, you're responsible for going and setting up the meals, you're responsible for washing the dishes, everybody helps out, everybody cleans up. Lost my microphone there for a second. But it's kind of like you don't have nearly the responsibility and kind of the, overseeing issues, preparing for things, kind of the planning, kind of on the facilitator side. I guess there's a difference between being a member, being a volunteer, and being a staff member. So whenever I was a member, like I said, it was more about letting loose with my friends, hanging out, just immersing myself in all the experiences of camp. When I came back as a volunteer, it was more like helping run the activities, being there to oversee kids, to make sure that we had enough adult supervision, making sure everyone was following the rules. Yeah, go ahead.
Did the kids respect the new boundaries that were set because you were no longer a counselor? So
Yeah, they do. And kind of the same thing with me being a first-year staff person this year. Also, like, I know that I am one of the younger ones, and I am maybe more lenient than some of the older adults on certain things. Because my kind of philosophy for the kids is, obviously their rules we're going to follow. We're not going to do anything that's dangerous or against the law or anything like that. But I kind of just tell my kids, make good decisions. You guys are young adults, and I will treat you as such until you prove to me that I cannot. And so, kind of one thing for me growing up, because whenever you're a teenager, you don't always make the right decision every single time, but I was kind of one of those ones that I was a little more mature. I was ready to get out of high school and go to college, and I didn't like to be treated as a child whenever I was almost ready to be an adult. And so I kind of value that for my kids, and that's one of those things with 4-H is that, experiential learning, giving them autonomy and the ability to make decisions is one thing that I value. And so my kids know that they can come to me, they can talk to me about things. I'm the younger one, maybe I'm one of the cool staff members, I don't know, I hope so, but there is still that factor of, I think they know that I can't let them do anything that is going to endanger them or be a bad look on the 4-H program. So there is a healthy boundary there. They still, like to have fun with me, like to joke with me, but they do respect the fact that there is a staff, I'm a staff member, and I have to make sure they follow the rules, and they help them make the right decision, I guess is the thing I would say.
yeah, that's one of those things I've struggled with is I'm not their friends. Don't get me wrong, I like my kids, but I'm not there to be friends and stuff like that. And so, sometimes that's hard for them, and it's hard for me not being friends with them. My friends or not, it's not that's not the point, but just drawing that line because I am one of the younger ones, especially in our region. I think there might be, I don't even know, no, there might be one person younger than me as a staff person. So yeah, that gets tough, is getting them to know that. And along the same lines of that, but that's where it goes from. When I'm serious and stuff, then it's like way scarier for them, I feel like, because it's like, oh hey, he was happy, and he gave us some rope to go out and take our chances. And then if I have to get on them for something, then it's like, oh no, we've really done something. But yeah, I was curious about how that change happened. So what was the process like going to be a regional rep for you to start everything? Because you talked about going to state Congress and knew you wanted to be El Presidente. But to start that, what was that process like for you?
Can you repeat that again? My internet cut out again.
Yeah. What was the process of going through the regional rep for you? Because we so far, we froze up again. What was the process of being a regional rep like for you?
I think so. The first year, I ran, and then there was, I think there might have been 6 of us that year, but 3 of them were existing reps that were rerunning, and one of them was the person I was dating at the time. Then there's me, and then there was a kid that was a lot younger than us. That, I mean, he wasn't a bad kid or anything. He was 14. He was a little squirrely yet. Needed to do some growing up. His sister was a regional rep back in the day. So we kind of knew that he probably wasn't going to get it because he needed to mature another year and probably make some connections and everything like that. Just wasn't probably the year for him. But so it came down to, we probably knew the 3 regional reps that were already on council that were running were going to get elected. So it came down to me and my then boyfriend, and he ended up getting elected. I was okay with that. I spent a year, they were regional reps. I spent a year as an alternate rep, which I ended up going to one meeting because one of our reps ended up having to be gone. So I still got to be involved, and Brad and everybody at the state council didn't make me feel like I was an outcast.
Oh, the fun of
Rep,
technology.
and
There we go. You froze up. We lost you for a second.
All right, where did I go out at?
You were saying Brad didn't make you feel like an outcast.
No, Brad and the council advisors and everybody on the council didn't make me feel like just because I wasn't a real rep, that I was kind of not a part of the group, because I was kind of figuring out, like, what kind of stuff am I allowed to do? What am I allowed to give my opinion on? And they were basically like, your rep can't be here, so that is your job. You are going to be a representative for your region. You're going to speak and vote on their behalf, so your input is welcome here. So I felt really good about that. Ran again the next year, ended up making it on, and that was when I was a freshman in college. And so that's kind of where my...
Did you run against your then boyfriend again?
I did not. He ran for exec.
Okay. Just
so
curious on that.
He was on exec the year that I was a regional rep.
Okay.
So I was a freshman in college at that time, and that's kind of why people ask me about why I chose to go to school where I did. Basically,
Yes.
Once I found out that I was going to be a regional rep, because I knew I wanted to be state president still. That was a goal I was working towards. But I had applied to 6 different colleges, and I was kind of like, well, this 4-H experience is the most important to me, and I have to serve as a regional rep before I run for, state council president, obviously. So I need to stay close to my region, because that's the only way I'm going to be able to be a regional representative. So I applied for several land grant institutions. I applied to Mizzou. I applied to Missouri State as well. I applied to Kansas State and Oklahoma State. And my choice ended up coming down to, because I knew I wanted to study ag communications, it ended up coming down to, do I want to stay at Crowder College and get my associates for a couple of years while I'm doing this 4-H thing and then transfer to somewhere else? Or do I want to just go all 4 years at University of Arkansas? Because since I live so close down here in the 4-state area, I can be in Kansas, Oklahoma, or Arkansas in less than an hour. So Fayetteville was 2 hours from my parents' house, and Columbia was about 3.5, 4 hours. So I ended up staying in Fayetteville because it was a very short drive for me to get back here to do 4-H stuff. So that's how that all came to be. That next year I ran for state 4-H council president, was elected. So that's kind of how that whole thing went.
Interesting. So you actually went to an enemy school for the good of the cause. That's impressive. That might be the most telling thing you've said. I like that.
That's basically what shaped my decision was location, and the thing for me is too, I absolutely always have, still do, and always will love the University of Missouri, always have. But it's one of those things where if I can give, as an MU employee, if I can give a kid info or opportunities on how they can become a Mizzou student, I'm absolutely happy to do that. But I also understand, I think a lot of people at Mizzou do too, that there's just a good fit at whatever school for whatever person, and it's kind of, you go where you're called to go. And for me, going down to University of Arkansas was what gave me the skills and shaped me as a person, enabled me to come back here and do what I do. So I still had that loyalty to Mizzou, but that place educationally, at least through my bachelor's degree, I'm actually working on my master's right now through Mizzou since I'm
thank the Lord.
Since I'm working here, and I do love the University of Missouri, but just being down there and having that experience ended up being the right fit for me, and I was able to come back here and work for Mizzou. I
have a lot of Razorback friends. I have friends in Arkansas. Arkansas is probably is my second home. I used to, especially a few years ago before I got this job, I spent, I don't know how many months in Arkansas, in the Fayetteville area. So I understand that. One of my best friends, he went to Arkansas. A lot of my good friends did as well. So yeah, like Siloam Springs, that's like that. When you're down there for a wedding or something, I messaged you. I was like, you've got to go eat at Kathy's Corner. Oh yeah, shout out to Kathy's Corner. That's how good. Okay, in my best man speech in September, I gave a shout out to Kathy's Corner. That's how good of a food it is. So I'm telling you, the next time you're there, you got to go there. And then Dose is amazing. I love that place. So yeah, it's Dixon Street's an interesting time. I've spent some time there. So I understand that. Dang Razorbacks, and I have to listen to them, and it's just such a tough deal when it comes to football and sports. But no, I like Arkansas. So I'll forgive you for going to an enemy school for because you did it for the good of the cause. So what's the process to be, okay, so we know you're a regional rep. What was the process to be El Presidente? That's an interesting one.
So for regional rep, that one's changing. It changed this year from the way it is last year. So of course and it's just a weird time right now. So of course, after you've been a regional rep for at least 1 year, a lot of people will do it more than 1 year. I couldn't, because I was old enough that I didn't have any more years left. But and actually, shout out, I am so proud. Again, sorry, this is a rabbit trail, but I was hoping that, I went so far and did so much in 4-H. I was hoping that my younger siblings might want to follow in my footsteps. I wasn't going to force them to do anything, but I was hoping. My younger sister's 2 years younger than me. She's out of 4-H now. She definitely is an introvert, and 4-H did a lot of things for her, but she is not, a public speaking go-getter doer like I am. She's very much, she was a very good camp counselor, probably better than I am, because she's really good about caring about people, and that's one of the things she does well. She's one of those people that is a leader, but not like that type of leader, not an outgoing. She's one of those kind of works behind the scenes and makes sure those kind of things get done, and cares about people and animals. So my brother came along. Of course, we've been in 4-H however long. We did make my parents send him to camp the first year he could go. They were nervous about that, but everything was fine. I was hoping, he's 14 4-H age right now, and I was going to basically force him to go to Congress this year. I wasn't going to have the regional rep talk, wasn't going to have any of that. I was just going to make him go to Congress, see how he liked it and everything like that. He actually, and so of course by this point we know that Congress 2020 it's canceled. We're going to have to have Congress next year. But back in January, we had a regional energizer, and a lot of the state council members from our region were there. And he comes up to me at the end of it and he says, I've decided I'm going to run for regional rep. And he made that decision all on his own. And I was so proud of that. So he actually got elected. He's going to be one of the regional representatives for Southwest Region this year. So that was super cool to me. So my brother gets to be regional rep this year. But as far as the process for running for exec, that's kind of the nomination process happens at the state council level. So before anyone out in the region or any of the Congress delegates or anyone sees it, the state council members will nominate and vote on their own peers for who they're going to make the candidates. So of course there's 2 people always that run for president, 2 that run for vice president, 2 that run for secretary, and 2 that run for treasurer. And then the 4 that don't end up getting elected will be in alternate roles, like 4-H Foundation trustee and so on and so forth. So basically it usually happens at the January, February meeting, which that's already happened. We already have our slate for this coming year. You will get either someone will nominate you, or if you know you want to be nominated, you ask one of your friends to nominate you, and they'll open the floor first for nominations for president. And so I had one of my friends say, I nominate Sarah Townley for the office of president. And so then what they do is everyone, once they've closed the floor for nominations, once everyone who wants to be nominated is accepted, they'll go, you leave the room, and then you come back in one at a time, and they'll have like one serious question for you, and then one kind of abstract, silly, something like that question for you, like what's your favorite fruit and why, something like that. So basically at that point, everyone will get their chance to speak in front of the state council and the advisors, and then the state council will vote on the 2 that they think should be candidates for president. And then it goes on down the line, vice president, secretary, treasurer. So that's how you get your candidates. And those are announced on Missouri 4-H Facebook page within a couple days after that happens. And then those are the people that when you see them, when you arrive at Congress, they have their posters up everywhere. They're going around meeting people, shaking people's hands, campaigning, whatever. Of course, there's a lot of rules for ethical campaigning, things you can and can't do. You can't, like giving gifts to delegates and stuff like that. We don't do that. We just do the posters, walking around, introducing yourself, networking, that type of thing. So that's a lot of how it works. And then, of course, all the exec candidates give speeches. Those speeches have to be approved. You give those, I think, the night before or 1 or 2 nights before to one of the state council advisors. I gave mine to Debbie Davis. She's the one that I picked she's a state council advisor that year. So I gave mine to Debbie. And so they give those speeches beforehand so that the state council advisors can listen and approve, and then they give them in front of the delegates. And then, of course, anyone who's a delegate that's listening, you get to vote. And then that's a lot of how that works. And we did get to pick as candidates, we get to pick, and the 2 candidates for each office have to agree on this, but you get to choose whether you actually find out live on stage whether you've been elected or not, or you get to find out after the votes have been counted. So if you're going to get emotional and cry because you lost or anything like that, if you don't want to do that on stage, then you have the option to do that. We chose to find.
Oh, we were right in the middle of this, and it has to freeze up on me. No! You chose to do it how? There was like a cliffhanger. This is like a bad time for a commercial. I got to hear how this ended.
All right, I'm back. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. No, it froze again. Are you kidding me? Okay, we're back. So
my bandwidth is low.
Okay, so so how did you decide to find out?
I knew, me personally, I wanted to find out live because I wanted it to be a genuine reaction, especially if I won, but either way, because my counterpart's still a friend of mine today, and I respected him a lot. We were very good friends. We were going to be okay either way. And so he agreed that we could find out live. And so we did. When they announced on stage that I was state council president, we found out live. That's the first we ever heard of it. So.
Well, that's interesting. So what was your reaction?
Oh, I was happy about it. When I heard my name, I think I probably cried happy tears. I was thrilled, and of course we gave each other a hug either way because it was going to be okay. I respected him; he was going to be a good president, and I'd be there as his sidekick, as his as a colleague, any way that I could help him or any of my other exec team. I was going to be there to support. So either way it happened, I was okay.
Wow, that's interesting. And I know we're struggling with internet, so I do want to talk about. So what was the process of being a YPA? How did that come about? Because you're at Arkansas, and then you graduate, and the job opening, and you jumped on it, or how's that go?
So that actually, I would definitely say that was a God thing, how that worked out, because I knew, mostly all of college. I don't know exactly when I decided, because I was accepted and came in as an animal science major. And so when I showed up and then I ended up deciding not to go to vet school. There are a lot of decisions that factored into that, but I ended up, when I showed up for my college orientation the summer before I was a freshman, I just raised my hand and was like, hey, I want to major in ag com. Well, earlier I'd said I knew I wanted to major in ag com. For me, it was weird because I've had different majors that I applied for at each school, because different programs at different schools sounded more fun or better than the others. So at Arkansas, I had applied to be an general animal science major. Then I decided I wanted to add a major in ag com. So then I double majored for 2 years. Then I decided that I wasn't really going to do anything with my animal science degree, and it wouldn't do any good to minor in it, because even with all the hours I'd already taken, there were still 3 or 4 upper level classes that were required for a minor. So I was like, no. So I ended up changing and being a ag com major and an ag systems technology minor. And what's the question you asked? I got sidetracked here.
The process of being a YPA to becoming a YPA.
Yes. So like I said, that I'm not quite sure when exactly that came about, but I knew, actually I set my sights on becoming a youth specialist. And so I remember actually even at one time I had to give in an ag leadership class a presentation with an interview I did on a person for a job in whatever field. And so I actually interviewed Carla and gave a presentation on what it's like to be a youth specialist for NU Extension. And so that for several years was something I've had my sights set on. So when it came time to graduate, actually the position that I'm in now, following the whole restructuring with the triad thing and everything like that, like I said, when I was growing up, the county that I live in, that I grew up in, had a YPA. Well, my boss, Bob, was in Jasper County, and so then they moved the specialist position over to Dade County. So oddly enough, he and I switched counties. And so then they opened up a YPA position. It'll be 2 years ago this summer, and I was actually interning for UA Extension at the time. I was living in Little Rock. I was a camp intern, and so I was going into work at, getting up and starting things at 7, going to bed sometimes as late as 10 or midnight, and no internet in our rooms. We would have to go over to one of the offices to do. It wasn't reaching that far. So Bob had actually contacted me and said, hey, this position's open. You should try to apply for it. And I wasn't really sure how that was going to work with me still being in school for one more semester, because I graduated in December of 2018. But I was going to apply for it. And then the position closed before I got my application in. So someone else actually ended up taking that position. So my mom had continued to tell me that, Sarah, how many times have there been things that you think you've wanted that God has a better plan for you? And I was like, oh, Mom, you're not the one who's going through all this. You're not the one who's going through the struggles with school and with trying to find a job. And she's like, trust God. There could be a reason that this door is closed. So then when I graduated, there'd been, in October, I actually applied for another extension job in my region. It was actually an ag job with one of the counties. And I interviewed for that job, and I did not get it. And I was absolutely crushed again. I wanted this job, get my foot in the door with MU Extension, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to work for Extension in Missouri. And my mom said again, but she said before I left, we're going to be praying that the right thing happens, that God's will happens. And so even if you don't get the job, I know you really want it, So I ended up not getting it. And my mom's like, again, God could be saying no for a reason that you have no idea and may never know. So along those lines, I actually applied for, I think, one other, it was a specialist position that was like a fill and grow position. They couldn't find someone with a master's, so they were getting someone with a bachelor's, that whole thing. Elsewhere in the state, I applied for that, never heard back until they hired someone else for that job. And so I was pretty upset about that too. I'd already started looking at housing, what if I'm going to move? I'm going to have to think about this. And so then the person that was in the position that I'm in now actually resigned probably right about that time, in January or February, sometime right after I graduated. And Bob contacted me again and said, this person is resigning. This position is going to be open. You need to apply for it. And so I did. And I had my interview on March 7th and I got the job. And so that was definitely one of those along that whole journey. And I, too, just on a personal note, along the way in October of 2017, I lost my cousin to suicide. And that was one of the hardest things I ever went through. And that had me, I had a lot of trouble in school and everything else along that line. And then the day I graduated, actually, launched into the whole breaking up with a person that I've been in a relationship with almost 5 years. That relationship ended very badly. And so between my cousin passing away and me dealing with the very, very bad struggling into a relationship, I was going through a lot of hard times at that point. And so the fact that I got this job, that it was there, was just absolutely one of the best things that could have happened. So
You're the only person I think that I've talked to that's left me speechless on this one. I don't know. That's a tough one to. See, this is why I do the podcast, though. Let's tell stories and let's tell journeys of 4-H and what it does for you and where you're at now. Because you are obviously pretty talented. And of course, this thing's freezing up. Wow. This is why I wanted to do this podcast, to tell the stories. Obviously, you're talented, and this is going to freeze up again, isn't it? So you're talented, you're successful, you're really good at what you do. Probably. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. So, no, but you're an awesome fit for MU Extension and 4-H, and that's for sure. So what has your year been like? Obviously, I mean, who would have predicted COVID-19, but it's been an interesting time, I imagine.
Of course, like, getting hired at the end of May or right at the beginning of camp season, fair season. Actually, this is an interesting story. This is really funny. It's interesting. I had camp, of course. My boss lets me go for the whole 2 weeks of camp. So I end up, I the way through and do the full 2 weeks of camp because I absolutely love it. I have the energy for it usually. And then our county fair is usually like the second week of July, and it lasts for like 7, 8, 9 days. It's one of the longest county fairs like ever. This year is the 11th through the 18th. So I had my first county fair as YPA, and the next weekend, I think, I ended up in the hospital. I never had a hospital stay in my entire life. How old? 22 last year. 22 years old. Never rode an ambulance. Never been to the hospital. Anything like that. And so I like to joke. People talk about, a lot of my ag teacher friends or 4-H friends will share memes about like me after camp. It'll be like a Barbie doll that's falling down like in the dirt with its hair on. This is what I look like after fair week. And I'm like, no joke, I was in the hospital after fair week. So they ended up, that was a weird situation, ended up calling it mono. And so that was a whole, having first year, first fair as a YPA, going to the hospital, having to deal with that. And then I ended up, of course, we have Ozark Empire Fair down in Springfield, did that too. And then State Fair, I ended up, and little, I guess, plug for 4-H photography, everything it did for me. 4-H Foundation actually had me come and be the photographer for Hall of Fame ceremony this year, so that was a good experience. I went up to State Fair. I went for setup, and then I went for the Hall of Fame ceremony so I could photograph it, and then I did stayed up at State Fair for tear down and everything like that. And I was sleeping half the time that I was at State Fair, so I was still tired all the time. And so that's kind of how that summer went. Things calmed down a little bit. We had some local fundraising things like for United Way and stuff like that. We had our banquet in November. December was kind of of course my CES too, she in my office, she helps me make a lot of community connections with a lot of the groups that I have started or will start programming with. And then of course everything changed with COVID-19, so that's a new avenue. That's something I'm exploring day by day. But so that's made my first year a little bit more interesting for sure.
I thought my first year was interesting. You win by a mile. Do you do anything subtle? Does anything just kind of fly under the radar? I mean, because you get mono.
No.
Challenges going through college, just.
It seems like I'm kind of lazy. Of course, we do stuff out on the farm and we do yard work when we get nice days and stuff, but my sister and I, usually kind of our hobby that we do pretty regularly is nearly every night that we're home in the evenings after supper before bed, we sit down on the couch and we play video games together. That's something we do every night. So it's pretty low-key hobby that we have, especially, and that's something that hasn't changed right now because we have to kind of stay at home-ish, stay on the farm, stay here, not go out in public, not go do, fun stuff, go to Joplin or whatever. We just play video games or, go outside or clean the house or do gardening, stuff like that. So a lot of my hobbies are, people ask, what do you like to do? And, well, stuff on the farm, gardening, playing video games, doing crafts. Those are some of the things I do in my free time.
So what are the video games we're talking here? Now I'm interested.
Well, I mean, we play a few, but the one we play every single night is PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. We play PUBG on mobile. I have it on Xbox, but we learned to play it on mobile. And
you're a mobile person, okay.
Mm-hmm. For that game, just because we started playing it on mobile before I got an Xbox One. I already had an Xbox 360, but before I got the Xbox with the PUBG package, we'd already played it on mobile, so that's the way we stay playing it. But we play some other stuff like Red Dead and stuff on Xbox sometimes. But
I'm a PS4 guy. Okay. Moving on, back to topic. So what are you doing right now with COVID-19? Because I know it's a challenging time as a staff person. So you want to talk about some of the things that you've been doing for that?
So I do feel like I struggle a lot with and I know I do need to be taking some time for, mental health, making sure that I'm not stressing myself out and everything, but I also do feel self-conscious because there's so many other people that are doing so many things and able to put things out and everything like that I feel like I need to be cranking my stuff out. I feel like I'm not doing anything. But my two main things, and the ones that I put on that shared Google Doc that I was doing, was my livestock judging series and some horse videos. Those I actually was emailing W. Davis earlier about kind of coordinating with some of the other people that are doing horse videos on what topics my sister and I could do so we're not overlapping. And of course she's contacting veterinarians and stuff for the things that are more medical related, vaccines or whatever. But as far as grooming or breeds or handling, training, showing, my sister and I will be coordinating with people, other people, so we're not overlapping with the video content. But we do plan on rolling some of those out on YouTube. Those will be short. Those will probably be 5-10 minutes just because I'll be editing them down to make them concise. The livestock judging videos are probably a half hour in length each. I've only got one done. I've got some of the other PowerPoints started, but I've only got one recorded, and it's 36 minutes, and I can't upload it to YouTube on this internet, at least not right now. Hopefully I'll get that out soon. And I also put out worksheets with that I give to my kids ahead of time so that they can fill out, like I make fill in the blank spaces that I get the answers to in the video so they can go through and fill all that out. So those are the main two things, other than I will have some time to finish some, and this could sound really bad too. I normally don't have that bad of a turnaround on my photos, but I still have photos from last summer, like at my fair and some of the dairy judging stuff that I still haven't finished. And a lot of that had to do with going to the hospital and then getting backed up and all that kind of stuff. So I do need to finish some of that. But a lot of the photography and videography are my favorite things to do, that and design.
So here you are using mono as an excuse. Jeez. What? That's awesome. You got a lot of stuff going on, which is cool. Oh, you can talk about your Instagram.
Oh, my Instagram. So I started, actually, the person who's a YPA before me had started the Facebook and the Instagram a couple years ago, not quite 2 years ago, I guess it was, but so the Facebook was already up, and one of our secretaries at work was already an admin. So she went ahead and contacted him and had him like give up the ownership. And so we got changed over on that. And he was someone I knew from 4-H. We were in 4-H together back in the day, but we, I guess, didn't really talk that much, but I knew who he was. And so, but for the Instagram, I just decided instead of contacting him about Instagram login, I would just make a whole new one. So I just went ahead and made a whole new Instagram, and I'll make sure in the event that if I ever change counties or if anyone else ever needs to get into it for any reason, I'll make sure they have the access. Same thing with the YouTube and everything like that. I made a Google account for that. But for the Instagram, I, of course, follow some of the people in my county I follow. I also follow accounts like 4-H, Missouri 4-H, National 4-H, some of the 4-H in other regions. If other counties have them, I follow it. I follow hashtags, which is not something I do on my personal because I just don't want to be bombarded with like following hashtags. But I do that on Instagram. I follow like Committed to Mo Families hashtag, Mo 4-H, MU Extension. So I see a lot of the stuff that the HES puts out there. I don't pay as much attention to it as I would like to. I think I could do more about as far as like being active and posting things. I think this week, the last couple weeks, I've been trying to do more with planning my social media. Like maybe I got a Hootsuite account, so maybe I can make some like pre-done posts and have them scheduled. Posting things on my story, doing things on stories is something that really engages the kids a lot. Like that bingo I was talking about. I might make some more templates. That I think that would be really fun.
Talk about that. Expand on that, because that was a conversation we had before we were recording. So no one knows about that.
I will pull it up. I've had several kids share it, at least the ones that I follow, either that the Jasper County account follows or the ones that I follow on my personal page, because if they're private, I can't see their stories. But I've seen some of them posting it already. I did a bingo thing, and you can't read it on here, but that's kind of what it looks like. It's just I made it county specific. It's Jasper County 4-H bingo. And so some of the thing I had, it says cross off everything you've done, and then it has the bingo square, and it says tag 3 friends, because that's what a lot of the like the bingos or the templates or whatever will have you tag a friend. So that's a good way to get more people to do it, more people to see it. So some of the things that I put on there was shown at the Jasper County Youth Fair, been inside the extension office, eaten a burger or hot dog Bob cooked, because Bob's kind of famous for his grilling down in our region. He grills at camp and everything like that, so he's kind of famous for his burgers and hot dogs. Given demonstration at club meeting, turned in a report form, been a club officer, been on a state contest team. Also a little plug, our meats judging, horse judging teams this year have won first at state, both of them, our senior teams. So
all right.
So we're super proud. And I was not a coach for either one. One of our horse project leaders, she's very good. She's our countywide leader. She was the coach for the horse team. And then Bob is very good at meats, so he was the meats judging coach. So hopefully we'll do pretty well with livestock judging, trying to just make that, improve it every year a little bit. some of the other things that were on my bingo list was been to a parents association meeting because, for example, if their kids, if they're going to miss conference judging, they have to go before parents association. If they're if they want to request more projects than our recommended levels in our county, they have to request that to the parents association. Attended County Achievement Day, entered the fair t-shirt contest, eaten multiple ice cream cones in one day at the fair, attended another club's meeting, participated in fashion review, attended awards banquet, got a school excuse letter for 4-H, given a speech, attended a teen council meeting, been to the dance at the fair, entered fair book cover contest, done conference judging, met your best friend in 4-H, had a project go to state fair, fell asleep at or on the way home from a 4-H event, and made so many new friends in free space. But so that's kind of the things that I put in the Jasper County 4-H bingo. At first I was like, what am I going to put on there that's like specific to Jasper County 4-H, or what things am I going to put in there that maybe if a kid hasn't gone to a regional state event, what are some things maybe they've still done? But once I got started thinking, it was pretty easy to come up with things that are like Jasper County culture, like what are some things that we do at our county level, and not just at the fair either, because not everyone goes to the fair, not everyone shows livestock or everything. But once I kind of got thinking, it was easy to come up with some stuff that are pretty unique, pretty on brand, I would say, for Jasper County 4-H.
That's a great idea, and that's why I wanted you to talk about it, because and if you want to send me that template or however you can get that done, that would be awesome. Because I'll figure a way. I don't know if I don't want to do Instagram. I may have to, but maybe Facebook story or something like that.
And my Instagram stories are synced to where they also post to Facebook, so I don't know. I think it's been more than 24 hours, so I don't know if I can see if anyone's viewed it on Facebook. But supposedly, if everything's hooked up right, linked up, synced up, my Instagram stories should also post as Facebook stories to Jasper County 4-H Facebook. But
that's cool. That's cool. Before I run out all your internet, and I have more Zoom meetings, which I feel like you can never have enough of Zoom meetings here for too long. I want to thank you for coming on. And if you have anything to say, here's your time. I'll give you the time if you want to say anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on. It's been really great to be able to share my story once again. It's something that I've definitely done in the past. I'm always proud of where I've been in 4-H and kind of the person that has made me and the things that I've been able to do because of it. But I don't know that I've shared it a lot lately, so it's been good to reflect on kind of where I've come from and how 4-H has changed my life. I think some of the main things, the advice that I have for some of the youth that are in 4-H is, I guess the first piece would be to not give up. And that sounds like, oh, that's really simple, that's cliche advice. But when it comes to like filling out your report forms, trying to go to National Congress, trying to run for regional rep, things like that, I know that it's super discouraging to not get picked. Even back in the days when I was in school, I talked a little bit about my elementary school experience. To be one of the last ones picked on the kickball team just because you're not a popular kid, even though you can run fast, or just not being picked in general sometimes, especially if you worked really hard on something, you kind of take it personally and you think, is it because there's something wrong with me? But sometimes there's just that extra year of growth or 2 years that you have to go through. And for me, that was like for National Congress. I applied the first year. I didn't make it past regional interviews. The second year, made it all the way to National Congress. It was just that year in between, some extra 4-H experience, some extra growth that I had, as well as running for regional rep. Like I said, I was a alternate rep first, and then the next year I was elected. And so whenever your name doesn't get called, whenever you get a letter that says you were not selected, it can be super discouraging and easy to take it personally, like, why didn't I get picked? What is wrong with me? But I would just have to say that hard work, an extra year of growth can make all the difference. Practicing your interview skills, I would say never give up, because even just a year can make a difference. The other thing that I would say is, for me and my colleagues, whenever we judge things like report forms, my biggest emphasis is evaluating 4-H members on their growth and how personal experiences, not just the fact that I've had this experience, but I always evaluate, what did you do with it? So to all 4-H members, I would say filling out report forms or end of year forms or whatever it is, applications you're filling out, even for something like Legislative Academy, when you have to fill out applications, you have to talk about your 4-H experiences. It can feel like you're just writing stuff down. You just have to put it on the paper. I just have to talk about, well, my club went and did this, or we did that, and here's what we did. And you might put some, down some pretty generic stuff about what you learned or whatever. I would definitely encourage you to think about the experiences that you've had at your club level, regional, state level, whatever, and not only reflect on the fact that you did that or experienced that, or even necessarily what you've learned, but talk about how that makes you a different person. Because especially like even me telling my 4-H story, I can come out of it and say, here's where I was, here's the things I experienced. Like my horse show story, I can look at that on the other side now and see what that taught me and how I went forward as a different person. So that's what I would encourage youth to do, is don't just reflect on, I did this, or not even, I did this and I learned, but go that extra step and reflect on, I did this, it went great, but I also think that going forward, I can improve it this way. Or I did this, it did not go well, but I really learned a lot, and here are the things that I'm going to do going forward. Here's what I took away from it. Here's how it made me a different person. So I think those are probably my biggest pieces of advice, is that never give up. Always kind of reflect on how experiences change you as a person. And then also just that your 4-H staff person is always there to talk to you if you need advice on 4-H, or if you really need anything at all. We're always here, and that's probably my job. I mean, it's not my job description. My job description is bullet points of this education-wise, this engagement-wise, here's the things you have to do for extension. But if I told you what my job description was, my definition, it would be to believe in kids and to love on kids, because I definitely know what it feels like to be that kid that doesn't have, you feel left out, you feel like no one believes in you, and a 4-H staff person or some of your peers in 4-H tell you did a good job on something. They encourage you. They want you to be a part of things. That's our job as 4-H staff people, is to believe in kids and help them be the best versions of themselves. So that's what we talk about when we mean making the best better. It's not just to change you because you're not good enough as a person. It's to help you, who's already a great person, become the best you can be. So those are my closing remarks, I guess.
I can't follow that, so thank you though. Thanks for the coming on and sharing your story and the great advice there, man.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye.
Bye.